This is Alejandro Ibrahim interviewing Professor Irving Joyner for the HBCU Radio Preservation Project. The time is 9:03 on July 10th, 2024. This interview is being recorded at the WNCU studios at North Carolina Central University in Durham, North Carolina. So my first question today, sir, is could you please state your full name and what is your role? And role do you play at the station here at North Carolina Central University?
Okay, I'm Irving Joyner, IRVINGJOYNER. I'm a professor at North Carolina Central University School of Law, and I co-host the Legal Eagle Review here on WNCU 90.7 FM.
That's great. Thank you. Could you now please tell me when and where you were born and a little about the people who raised you? We want to get to know more about you and you as an individual, sir.
That would take an hour so just to do. Born in Brooklyn, New York, and raised by my grandparents in a small town here in North Carolina, Grange, which is in Leno County, which is the eastern part of the state. My mother was a part of the Great Black Migration that allowed for African American young people at that time, after they graduated from high school, to go north to escape the Jim Crow restrictions in the South. And my mother was in the wave of African American who ventured to New York. She followed my uncle and aunts there, where they started their lives. She did not want me to go to New York schools, so I was shipped back to North Carolina with my grandparents, where I attended segregated African American school, which was probably the best decision that could have occurred, affected my life journey, because it was there that I was able to learn the foundations of life and education, and certainly learn about Jim Crow laws and the impact of segregation. I was regularly traveling between North Carolina and New York, and visibly observed the differences in the environments there, and how life changed for African Americans who then escaped the South. But I grew up in a protective cocoon created by my grandparents and others who had children or grandchildren similarly situated, and we obtained a first-class education, as did others who left from here, that allowed them to compete in the economic markets of the North when they got out of here. So that's a kind of quick summary of those growing up years.
That's great. What did your parents or caretakers do for work? What was their skills, trades, days of means and economics?
My grandfather was a carpenter. He built houses, and in fact built most of the houses for African Americans in Grange before he had a stroke. My grandmother was a housekeeper. She was the administrator of the home, and she ran it like in the military. She didn't take any stuff from anybody, but she took care of my cousin and I, who was like a brother to me growing up. He was 3 months younger than me, so we grew up as brothers and worked together in educational efforts and other things growing up. But when my grandfather had his stroke and he could no longer work, then the family was supported by the work of my grandmother, who basically was homebound or home stretch, where we had our own gardens and animals, and we grew food stuff. And as a youngster, we had to go out and tend the crops and tend the herds that we had, and so it taught you a kind of work ethic. Everybody had a role to play, and even though we were in school, we were workers in the household. Very religious family, where we had to be in church every Sunday, and on our home Sundays, it meant being in church all day long. From Sunday school through morning service, afternoon service, and then night service. We had to both attend and serve in one capacity or another, depending on what time of the day it was. But it was a home that was very religiously structured, and so we learned a lot of ethics and morality and all of the things that argued for freedom for African Americans, and that we should be independent, that we should be self-sufficient, and that we should be free and able to enjoy the democratic life that had been promised to us and taught to us in our schools and in our churches. That was what we were mobilizing toward and being prepared for, and being motivated to accomplish.
That's great. I really want to go into how did living under Jim Crow shape your interest in the law, and did that start early in your life? And you also mentioned how you got some of your principles and beliefs from church, how the fundamental piece. So if you could you just wrap that all together and share that with me? How did it all play out?
None of that prepared me or motivated me to get involved in the law. We were in a survival mode, and our focus was on surviving. My grandparents' major interest was in ensuring that we were not exposed to the white extremists, the Klan and others who would do us harm, and that we were shielded as much as possible from the impact of segregation. So we had a cocoon, which all of the African American students were a part of, and the older people sought to protect us. And because the notion was that if they could get us through high school, then we could escape. We could go north, and we didn't have to contend with the rigid Jim Crow segregation that we were dealing with at the time. And it was a normal practice in the neighborhoods and in the towns and cities around, that on graduation night from high school, your parents would meet you at the steps coming down after you received your diploma and hand you a ticket for the next day on Greyhound or Trailway to go north. And that was a ritual that occurred during that time. And that's what the Great Black Migration was all about. And our teachers had it in their portfolio to prepare us for that life outside of or inside of North Carolina, but that we would be prepared amply to compete in the economic world wherever we went. And it worked out, because as African Americans went north, they then became self-sufficient and created a whole lot of changes in life, and the whole Harlem Renaissance and all of that grew out of this great black migration that occurred. Several things though kind of shaped my not fear, but antagonism toward Jim Crow. One was the murder of my cousin when I was 7 years old by a white police officer in LaGrange, Bobby Joyner, who was a senior in high school at the time, and someone that I looked up to because he was a close cousin. We attended the same church. We attended the same school because we went from first to 12th grade here, and he was very active in church activities and in school activities. And so he was a kind of hero. And one night on his way from choir rehearsal at the church, and he had to walk what we call across town. On his way home, he was stopped by a white police officer who shot and killed him in the driveway of the local white high school. And after he was shot, the officer dragged his body from across the school grounds and placed it under a window of this white woman's house, and claimed that he was trying to cut the screen and break into the house. And that was the narrative created by the police officer. We found that that was not true through observations by other family members who, not known to them, were engaged in the disposal and picking up of his body. My uncle was a mortician, worked for the funeral home, and the body was then, he was then contacted, the funeral home was contacted. When he found out who it was, he then personally went to the scene and with his camera, and then recorded the scene. And in the recording of the scene, you could see where there was pools of blood in the schoolyard. And then there was visible indentation in the ground and in the grass where his body was pulled across and placed under the window. And he recorded all of this information. Law enforcement officers were not aware of who my uncle was because he lived in another town, Goldsboro, and worked for the funeral home there. Then in addition, there was an African-American sanitation worker, they called him garbage man in those days, who was, his job was to pick up the garbage and to keep the town streets clean. And he was then roused from his home and directed to go to the school and to dig up the dirt and turn it over so that the blood would not be present when daylight came. And he went out and he did that, but while he was doing that, there was recording of that by my uncle and the funeral home people. So we had evidence, and we attempted to get the prosecution of this officer. We went to obviously the prosecutor there in town. We contacted the State Bureau of Investigation. We were engaged with the Justice Department, the U.S. Attorney, everybody. And no one would do anything about it. And during that time, my grandfather was organizing people in the neighborhood to protest what had been going on. And we could see Klansmen riding by the house and taking tag numbers of the cars that were parked around meeting to talk about this event. So there was a lot of harassment going on. There was an increase in arms in the house. My grandfather had to, get additional rifles, and other members of the community surrounded the house and everything to make sure that nothing happened to us. But at 8 years old, it was a very visible imprint in my mind about the injustices that we face, and what the impact of Jim Crow was, that it deemed that we had no value. And that we could be killed at will. So that was something that stuck into my mind from that age going forward. But that didn't move me toward the law. It just emboldened my disgust for Jim Crow laws, and that I was going to do something about it at some point. So it energized my anger that stayed with me, and I know I'm going on a little bit, but
take your time.
But but it was a kind of a driving force. We didn't have in the area any African American lawyers or any law enforcement officials that we could go to for any assistance. So that my efforts then came on trying to get involved in efforts towards civil rights and working with student groups. And so when the student protests began in 1960, I was front and center, working to support those efforts. The Greensboro 4 in February of 1960, that sit-in was something that really sparked my interest. And at the time I was in high school, and I played basketball, and we had a very good basketball team, one of the best in the area, and ended up winning the state basketball tournament. And that was the year of the sit-in. The Greensboro 4 occurred in February of 1960. The state basketball tournament was in March of 1960, and it was held at North Carolina A&T.
Wow.
And one of the things that I made it a point to do as I was playing or between games that we had was to interact with students at A&T to find those who had participated in the sit-ins, to talk to them about, why they did what they did, and offer encouragement, and to pick up tidbits of knowledge and inspiration from them. But it was something that I was passionate about. And so between games, I would steal away along with a couple of other people, and we would just track down students. And we would go up on Market Street and to the Woolworth counter where they had the demonstrations just to see and to feel. And so from that point on, I became a civil rights warrior.
Wow.
And which eventually led me to, well, actually, I left North Carolina that year, returned to New York, but would join other students in supporting civil rights activities around, and then eventually I became a part of Brooklyn Core, the Congress of Racial Equality, and working with them in civil rights organizing.
I don't mean to interject, but I want to bring it a little bit back to radio, but we're going to talk about when you went to college. My mom's from Brooklyn too, so I want to hear more about your experience in New York.
Everybody's from Brooklyn. The thing is, and the amazing, half of Brooklyn is from North Carolina, either North Carolina, South Carolina, or Virginia.
Okay.
But mainly North Carolina and South Carolina. So there was always a connection between the two.
Yeah.
You know.
So I want to know more about your experience with radio. So did radio play any role in your family's survival during this time period, and maybe as a form of escape to communicate information? You know, how was radio in your life growing up, especially black radio, and how instrumental was it to your development?
You know, I appreciate that question. Radio was the lifeline to communications for us. There were two things that we had. We had Jet magazine and Ebony, and the black newspaper, the Norfolk Journal and Guide, the Wilmington Journal, Raleigh. So all of these black papers. So that was a source of information about what was going on in African American communities around the country. Radio was a lifeline because this was before television was really moving along. And so we would listen to the radio, and they would have 15 to 20, 30-minute slots reserved for black broadcasters to put on music shows. And our radio station was out of Kinston. So there was like a little 30-minute segment every day around 3:30, which was right after school, where we would listen to the black show. And then on Sunday, then you had gospel on the radio that we listened to, and my grandmother listened to it intently every Sunday. You know, that was to prepare us to go out into the church community. But radio was our source of information, particularly for news that was going on at the time. And then we moved into television from that point. Because of my grandparents had 8 children, most of them in New York. They were school teachers in North Carolina, and my uncle was a mortician. So economically, they were pretty secure. And they then made sure that we had all of the latest things going on. So we were one of the first families in the community to have a television set.
Oh, wow.
Which became then a community center because, you know, the kids around who we were hanging out with, you know, that's where we would park to see what was on television. And the only black show at that time was Amos and Andy, which was buffoonery galore. But it was all that we had, and but it made sure that you saw the caricatures that were created of us that was being portrayed out into the larger marketplace. And we were often very disgusted at that. And the countervailing productions came from Ebony, Jet, and the African American newspapers because they presented the real life of us, the things that were happening bad, all the killings going on around the country, and then all of the entertainment and the entertainers that were there, and the struggle for civil rights. So we stayed current with that as a result of the media. Now, doing all this, it never became a part of my life that I was going to be in it, but it was a source of information. But the newspapers all in the town were basically white. Carried white news, except on the back page. And there was probably half of it that was devoted to some information about what was going on in African American communities, church service or something like that. And we were great basketball players. And the newspaper was always full of stories about basketball at the white schools and what they were doing and how great they were. Never anything about any of the African American schools. So we would have big games, and word of mouth was how we dealt with it. And when I was in the ninth grade, the Kinston News and something or other, I forget the name of it, the Free Press, Kinston Free Press, that was it. I contacted them and said, why don't you carry stories about our basketball team and what it is that we were doing? Because we had a record that year of like 33-2. The next year our record was like 34-1. And they said, well, we don't send people over there to watch those games. All right, I'll write them and I'll send them in. Will you run them? And they did.
That's good.
So after every game that we had, I would take the scorebook home with me, and I would write out the stories of what happened during the game, and do the columns and everything, and take it over to the paper, and they would print it. I mean, they regularly. So then we were in the press. It was something because I was angry about not, our efforts not being publicized. But it wasn't any indication on my part that I wanted to be into journalism or anything having to do with the media. It was just a protest. But I guess it might be relevant to your context.
Yeah. And so that segues into my next question, because I can see that, your community was needing a voice locally. And so why does having a community voice matter to you? And how does that kind of segue into what you do with the Legal Eagle?
Well, because, voice was a key thing. And people needed to know of successes. And we wanted to demonstrate that we were successful in what we were doing. And so that was my way of making a contribution to helping the community know about what we were doing. And of course, when we won the state championship, I had big stories in the paper, and people were, congratulating us and talking about how great, we were, and the images that were set up. They were very proud of what we were able to accomplish. But then they began to carry stories about other things that were going on at the African American schools around in the county. But people needed to know because they didn't know. And if you don't know, then you're not in a position to appreciate and understand what is going on. But then the motivation for others to want to get involved in doing things other than farming and drinking and chasing the liquor houses and stuff. So we were able to present a different narrative of involvement that we were having at that young age, and it was important to us in terms of our own self-esteem. To say that hey, we can do things that's newsworthy in a positive vein, and that that was something that resulted from that.
What did you personally like to listen to on the radio during your youth?
We got Hotfoot Lawson.
Okay.
Hotfoot Lawson was the 30-minute man on the local radio station, and he would bring in all of the black musicians, and we would hear and all the songs and things that they were doing. Kinston was a hotbed of black musical talent during those days. We didn't realize it. People that you hung out with became great musicians. It was a regular stopping point for James Brown.
Wow.
James Brown regularly came through Kinston, and they would have concerts. Well, concert. It was entertainment.
Yeah, I get
at the biggest building around was where they sold the tobacco. So the tobacco company, big boy, they would rent it out, and they would have these shows there. and they would have white people on one side, and black folks on the other side. But James Brown would come through, and then he picked up a lot of locals for his band. Maceo Parker being one. Maceo was his sax man, and Maceo had brothers and cousins who were musicians, and they became a part of the James Brown touring band. Maceo went on to work with Prince and a whole lot of other folks, and then he was entertainer on his own. And then, but they were all around Kinston and Rocky Mount, great musicians who came out of North Carolina and became nationally known and celebrated all over the place. So that was a hotbed. So we listened to him because he brought all these people together, never knowing that these people were going to become stars when they got out into the world. So that was the only thing we listened to in terms of black. And then the Sundays was the gospel shows where you had a lot of local folks who became, Shirley Caesar, local people, just singing and doing their thing in church, and but a part of that. So that's what we listened to because that was all that was provided to us. When I got to New York, then all of a sudden, all these national stars out of little old Grange and Kinston and Goldsboro, Rocky Mount, and places like that. So it broadened my horizons. Jimmy Smith, jazz organist, was a local person. Clarence Avant was out of Liberty, North Carolina, promoted him. But my mother loved Jimmy Smith because of his organ. I mean, he could do the Hammond organ. He just worked that. So when I moved back to New York, jazz was what I listened to because my mother is what she listened to. So I'm stuck in what she was doing. Then we had friends of mine, or people who I grew up with, the Corsairs. Became nationally renowned and had a couple of hits. One, Smoky Places, Hiding in Smoky Places. They were out of New Jersey. And so rock and roll then was the end thing. So I listened, obviously, to that. And for young people, we were into the doo-wop era. And the big doo-wop star in New York at that time was Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers, and that promoted on every street corner doo-wop groups, and they would spend the night on the corner just doo-wopping. And so that was a show, and some of them went on to make it big. So we listened. That's our music tendencies. Athletics at that time barred African Americans from being in the NBA, the NFL. Only a few were able to get there. But in New York, there were efforts to get African Americans into basketball, and we had Rutgers Park in Harlem, where we all played. Everybody who was anybody had to play at Rutgers, which was a big entertainment.
So you was out there?
Yeah. But we had in high school the Ray Felix tournament and Rutgers tournament every summer. Those things would go on, and there would be a high school division, and then college and pros, and every draft pick or everybody who wanted to try to make it into pros had to come to Rutgers to prove themselves. And out of that was Dr. J, who was from Queens at that time. Kareem Jabbar did not come out because he was they wouldn't let him play in that area. But I'm going past where you asked me to.
And I was just going to say, I'm assuming you're a Knicks fan.
I'm not.
Oh.
I'm not.
Where did you go to college as an undergrad, and what was the time like there? If you're talking, you're in the 60s, during that area, and how did you eventually get into law school? Because this is a very pivotal moment in, American history, not only Southern history, but American history. So I want to get a quick, grasp of what it was like for you to be there. What was it like for Mr. Irving Joyner?
It's hard to do quick.
I know.
But I finished high school at Franklin K. Lane in Brooklyn. Was really on the Brooklyn Queens line, and I played basketball in New York. And it was obvious to me that if I was to go to college, and my family was pushing all of us to go to college because all our family did end up going to college, that I had to get a scholarship because my mother couldn't afford it. There was nobody in the family with that kinds of means to do that. So I got a scholarship to play basketball. It was kind of a joint academic and athletic scholarship. So I went to the State University of New York at Oswego, which was upstate New York on the other side of Syracuse in the snow belt, something that I did not know about at that time. And once I got there, it became painfully obvious that it was not a place that I needed to stay at. I made the decision that I didn't want to go to an HBCU at that time, nor did I want to be a first to integrate any of the other schools around. So I say I'll stay local. New York then became a place that I went to Oswego, not realizing at the time that it was worse than what I could have expected at some of the other colleges and universities. There were 13 of us on a campus of roughly 3,500 students. So there were 13 African Americans and 18 Africans, being different because they were from the continent. And they were shielded off from us. They were in a kind of a separate track. But there were 13 African Americans who were there. And in the cold, we banded together, but the cold was a deciding factor. And after a year, I left and went to Long Island University, which was in Brooklyn. While I was at Long Island University, I got very involved in student civil rights activities, leading up to the 1964 summer project that SNCC was involved in. And I then began to work with the Congress of Racial Equality, doing supportive work with SNCC and some of its members at that time, which then led me to a position with the United Church of Christ Commission for Racial Justice out of New York. It was a part of the United Church of Christ, which had a lot of members in North Carolina and Virginia. And as a part of that, I was shipped back to North Carolina to work on a case of Marie Hill, who was a 16-year-old African American who had been convicted of killing a white store owner in Rocky Mount, and she was convicted of that and sentenced to die. And the director of the Commission for Racial Justice read about her story in the African American newspaper and said, we need to get involved in that. And I was sent back to Raleigh then to organize around that effort, we ended up getting her convictions reversed and saving her from death row. But in doing that, the commission then decided, because of its large membership of African Americans in this area, to open up an office in Raleigh. So we had the North Carolina Virginia Commission for Racial Justice that we started there, that then ended up hiring as a local organizer, Ben Chavis.
Hey.
And with Ben Chavis, I was the national coordinator of our community organization program. Ben was the local organizer, which then led him into Wilmington and the school desegregation fight that was going on there, where students were boycotting classes, and then the rights of white people and a number of other ultra right-wing groups were coming through the community, shooting it up and stuff, and then it ended up with a big racial disturbance, firebombing, burnings that occurred all over the place. A couple of people were killed, a lot of buildings were burned, and then Ben and 16 other people there were arrested and charged with some of those events. And eventually that morphed into what then became the Wilmington 10. Ben Chavis and the Wilmington 10. I was the national coordinator for their defense effort at the time, and we had Jim Ferguson, Julius Chambers law firm that represented them, and I worked very closely with them. And in doing that, people who I had played basketball against when I was in high school then were lawyers, and they worked on this case. And I'm looking at them and saying, damn, I can do this. So I enrolled at Rutgers Law School.
Okay.
And as a result, I said, well, they're doing this. I can do this. I know these dudes, But I worked out an arrangement with the Commission for Racial Justice that I would go to law school, keep my job as an organizer. Rutgers was very supportive of that and allowed me to arrange my classes so that I could attend classes like 3 days a week, and then 4 days a week I was out on the road going around the country doing organizational work. But the Wilmington 10 case was the thing that pushed me into becoming a lawyer. We were painfully aware that there was an absence of African American lawyers at the time, and that there was a particular need for African American lawyers in the South. And as a part of the Commission for Racial Justice, we funded programs for African American law students to go into the South to work with local attorneys, and with the idea that they would go back to the South to open up law practices.
Okay.
And since we were doing that as an organization, then it was then on my heart that that's what I should do. And North Carolina was the place for me to put down my hat, because I had had experiences here. I knew people here. I knew the terrain, and it was just an ideal situation for me to open up a law practice in Raleigh. And I traveled basically around the state, handling cases of people, who, particularly in civil rights cases, because a lot of the local lawyers would not handle those cases, unlike in years prior to that. And then with Jim Ferguson and Julius Chambers and others, it became an ideal situation for me to just follow that lead.
I wanted to briefly go a little bit back to the Murray Hill case, and just wanted to briefly know, how did it feel to be working on that case, to be involved with that struggle so directly? I mean, her life is on, she could face death. So how did it feel working on a case that was, you have somebody's life is kind of in your hands? So how did that feel for you?
It was an awesome responsibility in the sense that you knew that it couldn't get any worse than it was, and anything that you did was going to make it better. and then that had a sympathetic story that you could motivate other people to want to get involved. We had a lot of support, for instance, from students at Shaw. That was like a base of operation for us. Students at St. Aug, students here at Central. It was Doug Moore, Reverend Doug Moore, who was here, who graduated from Central. Ben Ruffin graduated from Central. Very active in organizing here in Durham. This is at the point that Howard Fuller then came into the area with the Poor People's Efforts, and then to the Malcolm X Liberation University that they were trying to create. So there were a lot of things going on around the area that was encouraging, and allies that you could get to be involved with this effort. And then with Julius Chambers and Fergie pushing the legal side of it, we were successful. So it was a motivating factor, when people saw that you could succeed in challenging these kinds of actions, and that you could carry these cases into the court system here, into the U.S. Supreme Court, and you could be victorious. And that kind of, emboldened many people then to, all right, we can do this. We did this here, and now this case is going on. Marie Hill is 1968, 1969. The Wilmington 10 falls right on the heels of that, beginning in around 1970, 1971, that those activities. So there was just a swelling up of activities in the civil rights area that we were engaged in. And then I went to law school and came back. And but I was prepared, because I had been in the battle, and I knew the people, I knew what had to be done, I knew the contacts that I needed to have to give me support in the kinds of things that I was doing, and then I was able to give support to things that other folks were doing around the state.
That's good. That's good. Let me briefly ask one quick question. Did you establish a law firm when you came back to Raleigh?
Yeah.
You did? Okay.
Yeah.
So you established a law firm, pretty successful as a lawyer, especially, being a lawyer is a very noble profession in the South, specifically. I know that growing up here. So when did you actually join the NCCU staff as a faculty member? When did you come to NCCU and decide to be a faculty member? And I saw that you had served as the associate dean at a time. I'm sure you also served under Julius L. Chambers, revered, highly loved law figure here. How was that like?
Well, at the time that I started practicing law, before I started practicing law, I was a member of the National Conference of Black Lawyers. Even though I wasn't a lawyer at the time, I joined them because at the Commission for Racial Justice, we helped to fund some of the work that they were doing. When I went to law school, a lot of my colleagues were a part of the National Conference of Black Lawyers, either having graduated and become movement lawyers and movers in organizing there, or as students where they were supporting that. So naturally, I became a part of that operation. And around the same time in North Carolina, there was the North Carolina Association of Black Lawyers that had been organized by Charles Day, James Ferguson, Chambers, Frank Balance, and a number of other people. And so then I naturally coalesced with them, because Fergie and Becton, Charles Becton, were close friends, and so I became a part of that. Out of that effort, I became then the president of the North Carolina Association of Black Lawyers, and Charles Day preceded me as the president of the North Carolina Association of Black Lawyers. During that time, we met as a unit around the state 4 times a year. So every quarter, we would have a meeting where we would bring all the black lawyers in the state together for a weekend of education, legal education, kind of efforts to kind of talk through cases and things that they were involved in, and always ending up with one of the biggest parties that's going on in that community. Charles Day and I became close. Charles Day then became the dean at North Carolina Central Law School, and I was doing a lot of appellate work at the time, and he needed someone to teach a class in appellate law, and he asked me to do it. And so I had my practice, and then I decided that I would handle this class as an adjunct. A year into that, Fred Williams, who was a criminal law professor at the law school, was appointed as a judge here in North Carolina as a Superior Court judge. That was during like December of that year, and which meant that he had to give up his teaching position. It was on short notice, and Charles asked me if I would take over his class going into that spring semester. And so I did. I picked up that class, and I was doing the appellate advocacy class. Then the faculty offered me the position to join the faculty. And after conferring with my lawyers that I worked with, because at that point we had a team of 5 lawyers in the firm in Raleigh, 4 of whom graduated from Central, and so they all approved of my withdrawing from the law firm and then joining the faculty here at Central. So that was in 1982.
And you still continued your law you still practice law and also taught?
Reduced practice in general law, because I was doing like civil rights, criminal law, personal injury, some domestic law for a minute, but I had to leave that. So I cut back on all of those things except for appellate practice and doing civil rights cases.
Okay.
So I was working at the law school full time, and then handling civil rights cases and doing appellate practice, because that fit into what I was doing at the law school, where I was teaching criminal law and criminal procedure. And so that put me in a position that I could take those cases that I'm working with, bring those cases into the law school to help the students to understand how to handle those cases and to better understand the law. So that brought me into the law school or educational field.
That's great. And so you have a great, extensive background, extensive history working with the law. So now we're going to segue into Legal Eagle. And how did you bring your expertise from law and translate that into radio and now disseminate information to the public, especially at a time in the late 90s, into present day, when North Carolina's been going through a lot of Supreme Court battles, going voting rights, the Leandro case. Were you able to now present that to the public through WNCU radio station? And also tell us more about the origins of the Legal Eagle, if you can. I'm sorry.
WVSP was the forerunner of WNCU. My mind is slowing up on me. Valeria Lee, Jim Lee, out of Warrenton, had WVSP, and that was the black station. And they broadcasted all over northeastern North Carolina. The decision was made by somebody here. We need a to get a public service station on the campus, and they created that, and then they kind of merged that with WVSP, because Jim and Valeria were kind of moving out of it, and they took over the 90.7 and that airwave that was there. Soon after they started WNCU here, they had a community advisory committee that was tied to the radio station. And I became a part of that because I was at the law school. And because of the things that I was doing, I was often asked to do interviews, with the station and with some of the community hosts that had community program here. So I was over here a lot, working with that. And then oh Lord, what is her name?
Who else was on that committee that you were speaking about earlier?
I'm trying to go back and get the names. My mind, I'm old. Y'all not like that. But 2 or 3 professors from here. Larry Thomas.
Okay.
The names escape me now. It was a strong group of people who were actively involved
in the role
in the community, and wanted to expand community programming.
Okay.
And the names of the people now, it'll come to me in a minute. I'll get to that. But they became a part of this community outreach to endear the station to the community and to make sure that the community was embedded in the programming here. And so with that community board and then with community hosts that they had doing talk shows and things, and the jazz formatted station, that basically ran through the day, weekends and evening devoted to other discussions of what was going on around in the community, became a part of that effort. And again, when it comes to me, I'll bring it back and mention their names. But there was a program here, Like It Is. Like It Is.
Oh yeah.
The news director ran the program at that time, and she used to call on me to be a guest, and then she asked if I would just co-host the program with her because she had different things that she was doing, and I agreed to do that. And then she got another job doing some other, because she wanted to kind of get out and expand her wingspan. And they closed that, and then they asked, I don't remember which one it was, well, we could have a program talking about the law and how the law impacts people in the community. And so I agreed to do that, along with Tracy Barley, who was a lawyer who had graduated from Central. We were close friends, and so she became co-host. So the two of us did that, and I don't remember exactly the years now, but it went on for about 10 years. And during that time, then she left, and I was doing it, and then I got tired and said, I can't do it anymore because it was taking a lot of time to do. Then around 2012 or so, 2013, something like that, April Dawson, who is a colleague at the law school, came to me, and because she had been a guest on the show previously, and she said, this is a shame. WNCU doesn't have a program like you had back in the day. Why don't we start that again. And she then made contact at that point with Lakeisha, because Lakeisha is a graduate of the law school, and Lakeisha loved the idea, and so April and I then reignited the Legal review, and we've been on since that time. So that's pretty much how it started, and how we got to where we are now.
That's great. So what was happening in North Carolina community around this time of the Legal Eagle review airing from the starting?
African Americans in North Carolina beginning in 1980 or so jumped out into the world. This has always been a very active community, even before WNCU. Students from here were always active in civil rights activities. Strong connection between churches, community organizations, and the students here, as well as students at Hillside. Hillside is one of the premier black high schools in the state. And so there was a lot of activism going on here. It was the Black Wall Street. And you had luminaries of every ilk here. Whatever area you got engaged in, there was somebody from Durham that was involved in it. Floyd McKissick, for instance, who graduated from the law school, who was a part of the lawsuit to desegregate UNC law school. And then after he became a lawyer, within 3 or 4 years after that, he led the legal team that caused the desegregation of UNC generally, by representing 3 Durhamites who wanted to enroll at the law school there. So there was a lot of activities going on, and it was an area where you want to publicize that, you want to celebrate that, and the radio station then became like an excellent vehicle to do that, and then have outreach into the community. So when you're looking at a Mickey Mashaw, for instance, who was the first African American to be elected as a state representative from Raleigh, he was then the third elected from around the state. Mickey was a pivotal factor in pushing politics in the community. So we wanted to celebrate that and bring all of that together. And we were able to bring all of those people in to talk to them and have them to explain what was going on to people. So it was highly educated community. And this institution, then became a base for a lot of those conversations that we had. In the Legal Eagle Review was an ideal place to bring all of that focus together to talk about those things. I think I veered away from your initial question in doing that, but bring me back to where I need to be.
Just want to describe your program's listenership. Who is your audience?
I don't know. I know that we heard from Raleigh to the Virginia line, and up to Greensboro and back to Danville. Mm-hmm. And that is the coverage. We haven't been able to expand it beyond that. But everywhere I go, as soon as my name is mentioned, there's someone around who, you're the Legal Eagle. You're the Legal Eagle. And in fact, some places I go, people just call me the Legal. That's the Legal Eagle, right there. So when I'm around in this area, I run into people who listen to the show, and obviously from here in Durham, they are regular listeners. Durham and Raleigh, Chapel Hill, Burlington, and up to Greensboro. Other than that, I can't tell you who the audience is. I've never looked at a spreadsheet on what the reach is and how many listeners we have and things like that. But I know just anecdotally that the people are listening, because when I go out to these places, to Oxford, to Henderson, places like that, people, as soon as the name is raised, oh, you the legal eagle, you the legal eagle, so that's the best answer I can give you on it. Now, Lakeisha might have some more scientific and data, showing the coverage of the station and what kind of response they've been getting from whatever the rating services is that they have.
And if you could just describe the format of the show, was it a call-in or just sit down?
We started out as a call-in, and then we end up getting all the same people all the time, But then we said, well, we need to, and it was very unfocused, because you're responding to people with a whole lot of different interests and stuff. So we need to structure it. So we went into live broadcasting, and then we went into taping. So we would initially started with broadcasting live, and then we converted it into taping the shows that we could bring people in, sit them down, and then have a specific topic. COVID came in, and we went to internet, to Zoom, and we've been there ever since then, which has allowed us to broaden the reach of people that we can bring in, because before, when we were doing it live, people had to come over here to tape. Impossible to park around here, so that was like a big issue for people. And but now the internet or the Zoom has allowed us to, if you got your computer wherever you are, we can hook you in. So that's what we're doing now. And so we're trying to stay true to our beginning and our focus, and so that's how we've been rolling up to present time.
So how have the legal issues covered on the program changed over the years, over time?
No. The issues are the same. The issues are the same. The
Wow.
people are different.
Okay.
I started out talking about my cousin, Bobby Joyner, who was killed by a police officer. 20 years later, that's still an issue.
Okay.
30 years later, that's still an issue. All we do is change the name and the narrative of what happened.
So you're still having issues with police brutality coming on, voting rights?
Police brutality, violation of constitutional rights, issues of First Amendment, issues of Fifth Amendment, forcing people to confess, wrongful convictions. That has been something that's been with us since I was born back in the 40s. So those issues are always with us. We just come up now with different parties, different narratives as to how those things play out. But the issues, there are more issues now that we're dealing with. One time we were dealing with the desegregation of schools, and what the law, how Brown versus Board should be implemented, and things of that nature, where you had few African Americans. Now you have African Americans in these places, but the level of education has declined significantly, and people need to know why. We have more African American police officers and police chiefs, but the issue of police misconduct and police brutality continues, sometimes even with African Americans, and so the issues are still there. But the factual situations will change, and the people that we bring in to deal with what is going on presently with those issues. That's where we have the change.
What do you think the impact of your show has on the community that it serves?
Education, informing people of what's happening, what their rights are, directing them to resources that's out there that they can contact to help them out dealing with specific problems. We get calls from people after the show asking for help, and presenting their cases in terms of this is what I'm dealing with. How can I how can I deal with this? And we can refer them to lawyers around that we know, because many of them graduated from the law school, and we can refer them to them. Others that we know from other activities, and we can refer them and we can help them that way. So we become a kind of a referral agency. We also become a resource in helping them to understand that they don't necessarily have a legal claim. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of people think they have legal claim when in fact they don't. And then we're able to kind of explain to them, but this is more on an individual basis. But we try to structure our shows to help people understand what the law requires or what's required to promote a particular issue. And we bring in experts in those areas, people who are working in those areas to better inform the community and to give them exposure to the community itself.
That's good. So what does it mean to be doing this at North Carolina Central University, which is one of 6 black law schools?
Laboratory. This is a learning laboratory on the one hand. This is a teaching laboratory on the other hand. This is a research institution in between all of that. And it allows for people, whichever one of those areas you're in, to expand their base of knowledge, expand the resources that they are able to obtain, the resources that they are able to provide. And this is just a natural site that you can use this base now to spread out into the community. We have a lot of students here, for instance, who are in the escape mode. They come from small towns around North Carolina for the purpose of getting an education so they can escape the situations that they're in. But we can help to provide them with some substance that they need in going forward in the professions that they've chosen that they want to pursue. So this is a natural kind of place where we have that audience available to us that we can give what we can give to them. Often we bring in students to be guests on the shows to talk about the situations that they have encountered growing up, and then to talk about where it is that they're going and what their focus has been, some of their activities that they've been engaged in over the years. We regularly do that with law students, when they at last year, when they're graduating, so let's talk about, where you're from, what you did, what you learned, and how did that change you as a person as you now prepare to go out into the marketplace, into the world, and hopefully inspire them to want to go out and do, to confront some of the disadvantages that we have.
So I want to segue now into a personal testimonial. So what does it mean to work in the HBC radio and to work at WNCU in particular? What is the culture like here at the station from your personal standpoint?
It's, we work closely. Shadre is our producer. We have a great relationship with him. Lakeisha is a graduate of the law school. I used to teach her. She's been in several of my classes, and in fact, when she was hired, I was one that pushed for her to be here, and then pushed her to want to be here, and then once she got here, then she got stuck, and now she's station manager. She's running the shop. So all the people that were here, I don't know all of them now, but I used to know all of them very, very closely. I don't come here like I used to, because I used to be over here every week when we were doing them live, but now we're doing them remote. People have left. Kimberly just left recently, and other people have left. So I don't know them the way that I used to know them, but it's a great environment, great people, struggling because these stations struggle. We're limited in how you want to always get a larger marketplace, but we're limited. We have NPR and what they can provide financially. Our funding is not on the level of UNC, WUNC, and it's what they are able to provide. They are looking at millions, and we're looking at hundreds. Mm-hmm. Not hundreds of millions, just hundreds plain. And but they are out there. They are our not competitors, but they're leading the marketplace around here. And so we kind of feel obligated to keep promoting the station and helping to keep it on the air and keep it alive as much as we can, and providing whatever kinds of financial resources that we can to help them with the budgetary end of it. But it is something that is needed on the campus and in the community, and it has a community legacy that we have to sustain. And I go back to WVSP with Jim and Valeria Lee out of Warrenton, where they started this program mix, all part of the SNCC legacy, which is where they came from, along with Owusu, who became Owusu while he was here, starting out as Howard Fuller. So that's the connection that's there.
So my next question is, what does HBC radio mean to you? How would you define black radio, and why does it matter to you?
It matters because it gives us an opportunity to voice who we are, what we are, where we're going, where we've been, and what it is that we need to do. It provides us with an outlet that we can prepare and present the narrative about our life, our struggles, our victories, and our defeats that we experience along the way. And it gives you a sense of freedom to say what you need to say, what you want to say, based on the experiences that you've had. So there's not a feeling of restraint in who we bring in, the kind of messages that they bring with them, the challenges that we face, and how we can confront those issues and broadcast that to the marketplace that we have.
What's your proudest accomplishment while working on a Legal Eagle at WUNC? What's like that one thing?
Every week.
Great answer. Good answer.
When we close down and say, that's it until next week, that's our greatest accomplishment. I've been a part of some, from my perspective, great conversations with great people that we've been able to bring in, and every one of them is something that I place my hand on the Bible with, and say, hey, this is the righteous truth that we've presented. And then we have another show the next week and say, oh, but this is the best show we've ever had. So every one of them represents an accomplishment. And the fact that people in the community, as I roam around, continue to voice their appreciation for what we're able to provide to them.
And what lessons have you learned by working, on the Legal Eagle Review? How has your radio experience helped you with your legal career going forward, and also your teaching career as a professor?
It helped me with patience, organization, structuring, recruiting, managing people, and bringing them together to put together a coherent package. April Dawson has been marvelous because she's much much better organized than I am. She's one of those that lay it out in diagram form and stuff. But I've learned a lot just from being able to interact with people and to, I think, present our topics in a non-judgmental way. That we're not imposing our judgment, but that we are providing information to people for them to create their own judgments and conclusions about, what things are like, what needs to be done, what has been done, and the successes that we've experienced.
If you could pass down one piece of advice to the next generation of black legal commentators, what would it be? What's that one piece of advice?
Be open. Be open to the broadest range of ideas and expressions that people have, and present it in a manner that the audience can learn from what it is that you provide, and can see solutions to the problems that people are facing on a day-to-day basis. But be passionate about wanting to provide that service and those resources to the community.
And how do you feel about what we're doing at the HBCU Radio Preservation Project? Why do you think this work that we're doing with you, the station, is important?
People need to know. People need to know not only that it is going on, but it is going on at a high quality level. That it carries with it the same authenticity as programming from WUNC and other stations that's out there in the marketplace.
Yeah. Is there anything that you would like to mention that we didn't talk about in the interview? Any shout outs? You want to shout out anybody? Anybody in particular? Anything you'd like to mention, sir?
Well, obviously from here, Lakeisha, for keeping this thing alive. That's a thankless job that she has in trying to navigate to keep equipment going. Now we're going through this whole refurbishing and redoing the studio, and that is an accomplishment in and of itself. This is the first time I've been in this studio, because we were downstairs, and we're here because of the renovations that's going on. But when I walked in and I saw, oh my God, this is growth. This is not something that I was used to when I was coming in, because we had that little corner room there, with able to view the production studio over here, and then the production studio over here, and we were sandwiched in between. So just to see this is uplifting in my mind. But Lakeisha obviously has to get shout outs for doing all of the things that she's done, and then seeing the growth of the station from when it started all the way to where it is now. So,
well, on behalf of the project and also myself, I want to say thank you for doing this with us. I also want to say thank you for all your work you've been doing in North Carolina. Since I was a freshman, we've heard about you. We've heard about the great strides you made for our people. I just want to say thank you, and we're going to continue to fight regardless of, where our minds may be as young people. So I want to say thank you, and it's been an honor and a pleasure, sir. So
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you for and push forward.
Yes, sir.
I appreciated the fact that I got this invitation to do that. I said, oh wow, this is great, and but I apologize for the little mix-ups that we've had along the way.
I think doing it now has actually been very good.
All right.
Very good.
Okay.
Yeah,
well, that's
so.
good.